This episode of Made in America is brought to you by America's Inventor Lady and Home Talk USA. Home Talk is a proud member of the King's Broadcasting Network, which has been bringing you the best in home-based innovation since 1998.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being with us for this episode of Made in America. And thank you so much for being with us for this episode of Made in America, where we focus on all of the products and all of the stories of those wonderful Americans who manufacture right here in the good old USA. And my guest today for Made in America is Don Skaggs, and he has been working with different folks who have been manufacturing in America for some time, and is out of the wonderful state of Kentucky. And you know what? In Kentucky, they know how to make stuff. I think they know how to do. They know how to make stuff in a lot of the states. But you know, you're my guest, so we're talking about you and Kentucky. So tell us about some of the products that you know are made in America.
Well, actually, right here in our building, we've got one, and we have a lot of our folks that'll actually work out of our building. And one of those is Bennett Gatto, and he has a company that is went through some pivots and movements and changes, and he's rebranded recently, and his company is now called Kinovate. And he came up with, it was originally called Balance Breeze, which actually I love that as well. But he is a physical therapist, and he had these patients that kept falling, elderly patients, and they just couldn't stand, they couldn't keep their balance. They would walk, they'd fall several times a day. Every time he was with these folks, they would they'd be fine. He'd say, okay, walk, stand with a wider stance, and walk like John Wayne, and you're fine. And there were. And then he'd leave, they'd forget that, and then they'd fall again. So he came in here one day. I got a ringside seat to this, and this was so cool. And he had sewn or taped or whatever up these pads on the inside of the thighs of these pair of briefs. And guess what? He had his patients walk around in these god awful ugly things that glue sticks and duct tape kind of thing, but it worked. And he said, they're not falling. I leave and they're not falling at all. And so he said, well, that's great. Okay, let's go down to a seamstress. And there was these two Russian sisters, or Ukrainian sisters, I think. And they were making, 20 pairs up for him. And that worked okay, but that had its limits. And he tested his market. He went to the Kentucky State Fair. He was selling them, and he said, I've got to have these made in mass. And we found this great company right here in Kentucky. It's called Stitch Kentucky, right here in Liberty, Kentucky. And they were doing all kinds of things. They were doing something for another inventor up near Cincinnati called the Bandy Belt. And they were just doing these great things, but she was hiding in plain sight. I mean, it's you really had to find and look and dig and figure out, okay, hey, this person's here and they're doing stuff. Could he have sent this all off overseas? Yeah. Would it have been a nightmare logistically? You typically always is. Yes. You've got a language barrier, you're shipping it, thousands of miles. And guess what? When he had an issue or he had a problem he needed to work out, this place is an hour away from this building. And guess what? He could load up samples in the car and go back and say, hey, Stacy, this is almost right here. Let's just tweak this one thing. And then now she's making it perfect. And it worked great. So,
and we've had
these
Stacy
people
on.
are out there.
Yeah, we've had Stacy on the show.
Yes.
Made in America. She's been on the show. She's talked about what they're doing there. She's wonderful. I've sent inventors to her when they've had a textile product. And she is so wonderful, and she's an inventor herself, so she
Yes,
knows she
she
knows the
is.
roller coaster ride.
She's
And Even the manufacturing issues of trying to do something that is made in America, and
exactly.
all of the parts, the policies, the issues of manufacturing right here in America. And for some folks that are, they go into manufacturing mode, being able to get to the plant where it's being made is critical. I know I used to have people say, well, I'm going to China to see, about the manufacturing. It's like, call a travel agent, go on vacation, get somebody here who knows what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, why? There's so many resources right here in America that, and a lot of times people aren't really truly counting the cost because you've got the distance, and then there's all of these uncounted costs of time and expense and lost opportunity because it wasn't right, or they made a whole bunch, maybe the first article, well, the first one they make as a sample that they send back over to you. Oh, that looks great. And then they go do a big production run and they're horrific.
Yeah.
It's like we can't even use these.
I have
We're
a gentleman in Colorado who had gone, he figured, well, my only option is to manufacture in China. The failure rate was so high that
yes.
by the time he took out the ones that had failed, and he couldn't ship them back,
Yeah.
they don't fix what's wrong. And so by the time he took out what was all of the bad parts, it cost him less to manufacture them here in America than it
Mm-hmm.
did to go overseas. So he goes, I
Absolutely.
just brought all the manufacturing back, and he's been manufacturing his product in California for a decade now.
Yeah, and those relationships that you build here, if it's in your home state, that's great. If it's just somewhere you can go to, somewhere you can talk to, they're here in America, and it really changes the relationship of being close, that closeness. And you're not having to ship it, thousands and thousands of miles. A lot of people don't, even big companies, they really don't calculate this. I talked to an industry expert about this one time, and he's like all fired. Let's bring manufacturing back here. And he was even going on and on about, he said, even these large companies don't realize all the hidden costs of doing things overseas. Sure, it looks on paper. I'm sure some accountant somewhere has counted the beans, and they say, "Oh yes, this makes financial sense," but they don't count the whole thing.
They don't, and they don't factor in the time. When it
Yes,
takes, you've got these holidays and this holiday, and
right,
the new year that lasts for a stinking month.
right.
And so time is valuable. There is
It
one
is.
thing you cannot invent more of, and it's time. You
Yeah,
can invent more of it, almost anything in the universe except time. And
yes,
so, we've talked about the issue that time is not your friend in the inventing realm. And
no,
so those days or weeks that they are out is a big deal.
yeah,
And so when we look at it, say, all right, you factor in the time, you factor in the failure rate, now the shipping time again,
hmm,
and so by the time it gets here, there's a lot of things that go into it besides just that base unit cost.
exactly,
And
exactly.
so when the inventor, when somebody says, well, what is your, shipping cost? What is your manufactured cost? You know, there's a lot of things that go into that need to be added to that manufactured cost that a lot of inventors miss on the get-go, and then they realize
Exactly.
they're going in the hole.
Yes, yeah, and they don't, and they realize it too late.
Yeah. So
Where, I mean, in making stuff here is just so much more scalable. I'm
yes.
a big fan of scalability. Can you make one? Can you make 50? Can you make 100? Can you make 1,000? Can you make 10,000?
So
And if
exactly.
you have that ability to scale in a lot of small manufacturers, and I'm a big proponent of small manufacturers, I think they are the unsung heroes of this country, and they'll want to work with you. It's not
Yes.
like this big corporate, oh, well, we have to check with these, 5 different departments before we do something at all, before we sneeze or blow our nose. No, you've got somebody you're working with. They're small, they're scalable, they're nimble, just like you are, and they'll understand that a lot better.
They do. They do. So stick with us, everybody. We're going to be right back, and we're going to talk about an issue that is really critical to manufacturing in America and something that a lot of companies miss. So stay with us as we get ready to go and pay some bills, and we will be right back. And thank you so much for being with us for this episode of Made in America. And we love to talk about products that are made right in our own backyard. And my guest for this segment is Andre Roy. Andre has been manufacturing for 15 years now or so, around there. A product
Correct.
called PineRite. I use it. I have been using it for my entire family has PineRite in their house, their kitchen, their bathroom, wherever they need it. This is an amazing product. And Andre's been working, he manufactures right there in Colorado. But Andre, tell everybody, what is PineRite?
PineRite is a heavy-duty hand soap made from pine trees, and the pine trees that are used are from my forest. We really truly believe it's the best heavy-duty hand soap in the world. It's the only one that can say the more you use it, the better your skin gets. And
Well,
I truly don't believe there's a better product out there.
I would agree with you, since I am a, very fond user and happy user, and my entire family has been using PineRite forever. So, it's funny because I've got an ex-husband and I am fairly good friends with his wife. And I was sending her, PineRite and told her to order it. So she now orders her own PineRite. He says, there's a problem when your new wife is getting packages from your ex-wife. And so, we've always chuckled and laughed about that because she gets so many different products, from clients. But PineRite was one of the big ones because she had a bit of a skin irritation. And, PineRite is one of those products that you can, you ship all over the world, right, Andre?
Yeah, correct. China is starting up again. We're about the only soap that's allowed back into China, and it actually comes from an issue I had with the forest, with my forest. So it actually solved the problem that I had, and it introduces new sciences, and it helps people all over the world. Mostly in the United States. I don't want to get too exaggerated, but we're pretty much all over the United States now.
Well, and it's funny because back in the day of the beetle kill, all right, and they would strip the trees down and you would have these huge piles of bark and needles and smaller branches, and they'd take the logs out and make fancy furniture with it. And you're thinking, oh my goodness, there has got to be a better hot dog. And, so what can you do with leftover pine debris? And the fact that you turned it into a soap is actually brilliant.
Yeah, it's exactly the way you had said. I have a fairly large parcel of land. The beetle kill came in, which is a devastation to the forest. And I went to the Forest Service and what to do. And they told me nothing. And the problem you just can't fix. And your trees are worthless anyway. I was actually told that. And so from that meeting, I had a thought and how to process trees. I use the stored electrical energy in a tree to electrocute itself to dust. And
okay,
so
that's some pretty serious science. How did you know that a tree could electrocute itself?
to be honest with you, I didn't know. uh, it's one of those things you build it first and then figure it out later. And yeah, I know it sounds funny and a little absurd, but I built my machine. The thought took about 15 minutes, and build it took about a half hour to 45 minutes. And I ran it the first time and been running it almost every day since. I didn't know how it worked, so we actually had to have CU, University of Colorado physicist, to explain to me how my machine worked. And like I said earlier, it opens up new sciences, and just people just didn't know. And there's enough stored electrical energy in a tree to, like we've been saying, to turn itself into dust.
Amazing.
And then I had to figure out what to do with the dust. And our first iteration was fertilizer. It made a tremendous fertilizer, but people didn't believe it. And it's hard enough to believe my machine and then to think that it comes with a good product. So I thought of the hand soap because people would have an instant reaction to it. So with this pine powder, I mixed it with borax in the form, salt in the form of borax, pure soap, and pine tree. That's it. And been selling it ever since.
Well, and your science, they told you it's like washing your skin with pure vitamins.
Yeah, very much so. There's a lot of antioxidants, proanthonyl, cyanidin. It's the same compounds found in blueberries, and it's just really good for your skin. And in the old days, the Native Americans, they realized that a long, long time ago. So when they had a wound, they mashed up some pine needles and put it on the skin, and it actually fixed the skin.
Wow.
You know, I have an issue with the FDA. I have to be careful what I say, but it's a great
I understand. I shouldn't be saying that, it's like an exfoliant for your face, ladies, and it's the cheapest facial you're going to get. I didn't really say that, but, hey, keep it in your shower because you'll learn to appreciate it. So we're going to be back after we go and pay some bills, and we are going to be bringing in Sybil Bailey. Andre had brought up, an issue is like, the research and development, opening the new sciences, getting the new stuff out there. Well, there's a really interesting then connection between all of that brain work you do, Andre, and the R&D tax credit. And most American manufacturers don't know about it and don't know how to use it wisely. And I met Sybil 6 months ago or so, and was able to start learning. I mean, the first time I heard about the R&D tax credit, I thought it was a scam, but no, it's been around for decades. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that because there's a lot of made in America factories, inventors, and business people that don't know how to use this. So stick with us, everyone. We will be back to talk more about Made in America because we want to share with you all the stories and the products that you can go out and buy. And we'll let you know where to go and buy PineRite in just a minute. Hello, everyone, and thank you so much for being with us for this segment of Made in America. And we want to let all of you know, all right, about these wonderful products that are made right in your own backyard. And a lot of them are available at the madeinamericastore.com. It is a vacation destination, just in case you need to go shopping on vacation. Made in America store has got, feet on the ground in New York. But the PineRite has been sold there. Andre, you said you've been selling on the madeinamericastore.com website for
about 5 years. And what really impressed me about them is I had to prove that every element and even all of the packaging was made in the US. So when you sell to them, you actually have to prove that it's all made in America, which I find really neat.
It is. It's a, wonderful how they double check everything. So it's not a
They
matter of
certainly
just,
do.
you can't just put it on the package. They double check.
Yep, I think that's wonderful.
So, and for a lot of folks, it's like, well, you go into different places and, you might read a label, but it doesn't mean that the place the retailer has double checked all of that. And so we're very pleased to know that the Made in America store.com really does double check all of that.
Correct. You got to show them proof.
So, and a lot of manufacturers and, the folks who are making it, there's a difference between the manufacturer and then the company that is having it made. They're not always the same. Sometimes there's, a little bit of a, swing in there. But you actually manufacture your own product. You go out to your warehouse and you watch it be done. Correct, Andre?
Very, very much so. And there even are trees.
Yeah, there are your trees. So when you are, going through this, and I know you told me you've got a new product that's in development, you are constantly watching, doing the research and development as you improve your product.
Very much so. Well, it's very simple concept. The more you have to sell, the more you sell. So we're always trying to find different things. We've more than experimented with lotion, with our pine oil. We actually turned trees into a pine oil, and that's been real successful. So growth in a company, you have to have new items. It teaches you, it teaches the customers, and it keeps you in better shape financially. So it's a win-win.
I would like to introduce you to Sybil Bailey. She is our R&D tax credit specialist. And, as you're going through, your production and, you're making the next new product, understanding that, hey, that R&D tax credit out there is something that you as a manufacturer, feet on the ground in America, can use to your advantage. So, Sybil, thank you for being with us today. It's nice to have you.
Yeah, nice to be here again.
So, how can a manufacturer like Andre take advantage of the R&D tax credit?
Yeah, so the R&D tax credit, it's a super powerful incentive that the government basically put in place to create more innovation and growth within the United States. So you guys were kind of talking on all the points. This is going to be for those folks that have employees or contractors that are sitting in the US doing the research work within the United States. And in doing so, can receive a dollar for dollar reduction on your company's tax liability. So a nice little tax credit at the end of the day for keeping that innovation within the United States. You were kind of talking on some of the points, Andre, that the government really wants to see, the IRS wants to see to ensure that a company is eligible for the credit. So one, there must be a permitted purpose. So that activity that you're doing or creating or improving a new product must be established. You must go through that elimination of uncertainty, which hearing of your story of how you kind of came to the product that you now have, it definitely sounds like you walked through some of those uncertainties. Three, it must be technological in nature. So it must be based on a hard science. And then four, you must go through that process of experimentation. So at least for your company, it sounds like you're checking all those boxes pretty easily.
Yeah,
the products that you brought to market.
So, Sybil, how far back could Andre go to take advantage of that credit?
Yeah, so there's a 3-year moving window. So if you haven't ever claimed the credit, now's a great time to jump on it, but you can look back up to 3 years and also claim the credit for those 3 prior years if you haven't claimed it. You can use all those credits against your income tax liability.
So,
Great.
Andre, do you have a question for Sybil?
When you talk about R&D, a lot of times you're selling a product at the same time. You're putting it up the flagpole to see if people salute. If it doesn't work out, is that a good example? Would I be able to get a credit for that?
Yeah, that's a perfect example. So, like I mentioned, they want to see that you went through that elimination of uncertainty and that process of experimentation process. So, even if there are products that you weren't able to get to market, as long as they're a part of that roadmap of getting to that final product that you ended up with, there's definitely some qualification there. And our team would be happy to kind of walk through those details with you. But it definitely, a finished product is not the only product that we'll be able to kind of look into.
Great, great.
So I think, when I first found out about it, and I've learned a lot since then, I know just enough about the R&D tax credit to not try to answer any questions, but to call Sybil. Because, that's, it's like practicing law without a license. You do not practice tax without a license. And, or at least not without some know-how, because it is complicated. And, it's been around for a long time, but it is still complicated and there's lots you need to do. So for the folks that are licensing, all right, and it's being manufactured someplace else, they don't have the same advantage that Andre does, where he's manufacturing, right in his own backyard and, constantly fine tuning the product.
Yeah, that's an important to fine tuning and just experimenting with different soaps, let's say, as an
Yeah.
example, made in the U.S. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. When it doesn't, you lose a little money, and that would be probably a good example of the tax credit.
Yep, that's a perfect example. Yeah, the government wants to see it wasn't a super clear paved path, that you had to go through some of those trials to get to where you got to in the end, and they understand it's a financial risk in addition to kind of the other work that you're going to be doing to get that product to market. So that's kind of where the credit was first established, is to kind of give a little bit of a kickback for continuing that innovation within the US and keeping those employees within the United States as well.
So when somebody first said it to me, it's like, I didn't invent, a new electric car. And so I think it's really important. It's like, all right, you don't have something that's super high tech. You're not flashing off into space, or driving a new electric car. But the research and development that you guys are talking about and the science can be on a product like a new soap, new lotion, those types of things, as long as there are certain factors in place. So we're going to be right back. We've got to, go off and pay some bills, but we will be right back with another segment of Made in America, because you know what? There's an advantage to making in America right now, and it's called the R&D tax credit. We'll be right back. Thank you for being with us for this final segment of Made in America. This segment is brought to you by Product Quick Start. They do a lot of the different manufacturers prototyping, teeing up for manufacturing in America or any place else that makes the most sense for the cost of the product. Noah McNeely is our man for manufacturing. And we have got two guests right now. We've got Sybil Bailey with the our R&D tax credit specialist, although that's not the name of the company, that's the name of the program, and Andre Roy, the inventor of PineRite, which is the most amazing soap I've ever used in my life. And my entire family always gets it in, their Christmas stocking. So the R&D tax credit, Sybil, the company, give us the company name.
Yeah, so we're Arvo Tech, and we previously were known as Claris R&D, but have had some recent company changes, so kind of getting back to our roots, and we're now under Arvo Tech. So that's the name you're going to see us by moving forward.
So if you are out there and you are interested in learning more about the R&D tax credit, we do have a link and a QR code on the Invent America, America's Inventor Lady. We've got that QR code almost everywhere. And it will take you directly to the page for this early phase of, learning more about that R&D tax credit. And Andre, as you've gone through now over the years of research and development, how many different products do you actually have in the marketplace?
Four. We have four. That includes the different sizes. We have a bar soap made from pine trees. We have the pine oil, and we have probably the best soap in the world, Katie PineRite, for the ladies, and then the regular PineRite. And I do have a question for Sybil. Part of the R&D is attorneys, large attorneys' fees, as far as getting the patent. Would that be included in the?
So unfortunately, those fees aren't going to be captured. The main areas that are going to be captured for the calculation are going to be Box 1 W-2 wages for US-based employees, contracting expenses for US-based contractors, and supplies that were consumed or destroyed during the R&D process. So adding those three areas, the three buckets up, the credit will roughly be 7 to 10% of those qualified research expenditures. But as Rita mentioned, using that QR code, you can definitely schedule a free consultation with somebody from our team. We can walk through kind of what your credit could possibly look like and other inventors that are interested in claiming the credit as well.
Great.
So we're getting your information out to a lot of the different manufacturers in America that are going through, because a lot of times when they're like on Andre, you've got your baseline product, but you're constantly looking at fine tuning, you're looking at the new technologies. And so for anybody that feet on the ground in America, that Made in America gives you then that easier access to the R&D tax credit.
Yes, definitely. Yep.
And I know that, one of my guys had asked, and this is a good question for you right now, what is the difference between taking a deduction and a tax credit?
Yeah, so the tax credit is going to be used against your income tax liability. Another way that you can also use the credit is you can use it against a portion of your payroll taxes. The FICA portion, so this also allows those younger companies to also claim the credit. So as Rita mentioned earlier, this credit has been around since like the 1980s. When it was originally established, it was really only those larger companies that were claiming the credit because they're the only ones that had that income tax liability to actually use the credit against. But yeah, with the PATH Act in 2015, this then allowed younger companies such as startups to also claim the credit and continue to claim the credit into kind of when they become a more established company as well.
So I think that the greatest value is to those, they've gone, kind of deep into maybe the startup phase where they're actually producing the product.
Yep.
Because, you need either employees or contractors, people coming in and doing the work that you're taking it against, as opposed to what we would look at as being just a deduction. And I don't mean to minimize deductions. We use them all the time and we're grateful to have them. But there is a difference between what you can use the R&D tax credit on and what you would take as a deduction. A business deduction would be your patents.
Yeah, so a business deduction would reduce the your taxable income, where the credit itself is going to be a dollar for dollar reduction on the taxes that you actually have due.
So some folks would be using both, depending on which category they're in.
Possibly, yep. And we have a full team of CPAs and R&D tax experts that can walk through those kind of details on a company by company basis. We're happy to talk to their CPAs. We really want to just make sure everybody's understands the credit that could possibly be claimed, and then also make sure they're using it properly.
So I think one of the advantages, especially for you, Andre, is the fact that you can go back now for 3 years.
And yeah, I got to give Sybil a call.
Yeah, definitely.
We could very much take advantage of that, and it's there for a good purpose. So it makes sense.
Yeah, it's made for companies like yours, and we'd be happy to have that conversation.
So that'll be excellent. And as I've gotten to know more about it, it definitely helps more for the folks that are, getting their product out there and into the marketplace, as opposed to somebody saying, oh, gee, let's go manufacture this. and they're just getting started because they haven't done the research and development for, what, 12 years, Andre, that you've been doing it?
Yeah, a little more than that. The invention itself, the first iteration was about 15 years. Then it gradually got turned over to the soap.
So I think it's been, about 12 years since you went to that first show with us. So anyway, everybody, thank you so much for being with us today for this segment of this episode of Made in America. And we will be back in a couple of weeks with another Made in America. In the meantime, I know that the CPA guys will be on next week with, more information about the policies of manufacturing in America. So join us every week, guys. We're there.